I appreciate the quiet. It means you're ready to go, and I can say good morning and right on time. I now reconvene the general session. Will the recording secretary please call roll?
Here.
Catherine Williams Brown,
Here.
Jose Cardenas, Juan Cruz, Christopher Davis,
Here.
Michael De La Torre,
Present.
Marisol De La Torre Escobedo,
Here.
Anna Marie Francois, Makita Guno Shire,
Present.
Megan Gross,
Here.
Johanna Howick,
Here.
Susan Aradia, Terry Jackson,
Here.
Bonnie Clapp,
Present.
Monica Martinez, David Simmons,
Here.
Tina Sloan,
Here.
Kimberly Wise Smith. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to remind members of the public about the process to provide public comment. The committee chair will announce when the public comment period is open during the presentation of the agenda item and ask for anyone who wishes to comment to notify the meeting moderator. Individuals who attend the meeting at the commission office will need to submit a request to address the commission card to the meeting moderator. The meeting moderator will notify the individual when it's their turn to speak. At that time, the individual will be able to approach the microphone and share their comment. Individuals who join the meeting via the Zoom webcast will need to click on the raise hand icon to inform the meeting moderator that they'd like to speak on the item. The meeting moderator will notify the individual when it is their turn to speak by calling their Zoom ID. Please remember that the Zoom ID is the name used when logging into the meeting. At that time, the individual will be prompted to unmute their microphone and will be able to share their comment. Please note the Zoom ID name used by the member of the public to join the Zoom meeting will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Individuals who join the meeting via the U.S. toll-free number will need to press star 9 on their phone to inform the meeting moderator that they'd like to speak on the item. The moderator will notify the individual it's their turn to speak by calling the last 4 digits of their phone number and will allow them to unmute their telephone at that time. At that time, the individual will be prompted to press star 6 and will be able to share their comment. Please note only a partial phone number will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. All right then, I now recess the general session and move to the Legislative Committee. Commissioner De La Torre Escobedo, will you please convene the committee?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I now convene the Legislative Committee. The committee has 2 items before it today. Item 5A, Status of Legislation, is an information item that will be presented by Jonathan Howard. And Mr. Howard, will you begin, please?
Good morning, Commissioners. I was briefly introduced to you in April, but we weren't able to present our report then. So seeing as this is my first time presenting, I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Jonathan Howard. I'm the new manager for the Commission's Office of Government Relations. I've been working in and around the state legislature since 2009. Most recently, I was a legislative representative for the California Department of Education. The legislature recently had their House of Origin deadline, where bills must be passed into the other house if they are to remain active. The next upcoming deadline is July 1st, which is the last day for policy committees to may meet to hear bills. The legislature will then go into their summer recess. When they return in August, they will have a month to hold fiscal hearings, approve amendments made in the other house, and pass bills to the governor's office. We were monitoring 11 bills, but as you can see from the report in 5A, 4 of those bills have failed to meet legislative deadlines and are now considered dead. One of those bills, AB 2235 by Assemblymember Medina, we will return to at the end of my report. I will provide a quick summary of the remaining 7 bills. The item before you contains additional details. AB 1876 would require the Commission to accept employment verification for the previous 3-year period from local education agencies participating in a consortium in determining work days per year when issuing an initial emergency career substitute teaching permit. This bill has had no opposition and has no votes so far. AB 1893 would require the Commission to waive the basic skills proficiency requirement for the issuance of a 30-day substitute teaching permit until July 2024. This bill also has had no opposition and no votes. AB 2401 expands and makes changes to the Integrated Teacher Education Program Grants Program as long as funds are appropriated for it. This grant program is administered by the Commission for the development of integrated programs of teacher preparation in which an individual may earn a teaching credential while completing their undergraduate degree. This bill has had no opposition and no votes.
Recording in progress.
SB 1113 requires the Commission to revise its administrative service credential standards and performance expectations to include and strengthen preparation for inclusion with a focus on inclusive learning environments, universal design for learning, multi-tiered systems of support strategies, ethics for mindsets and culture, and the promotion of equitable environments by March 2024. This bill has had no opposition and no votes. And SB 1487 and AB 2694 we will deal with in item 5B. The authors of SB 1487 and 2694 have asked for the Commission support, which is why we're covering them in a later item. Finally, returning to AB 2235 by Assemblymember Medina, this bill would have required the Commission to develop an added authorization or supplementary authorization in ethnic studies, and to grant such authorizations to credential holders who have met the requirements and standards of the Commission for an added authorization or supplementary authorization in ethnic studies. While this bill is no longer moving forward, the requirement that schools begin offering ethnic studies courses by 25-26 and the requirement to take an ethnic studies course for students to graduate from high school starting in the 2029-30 year still stand. Commission staff have begun working on options to support the implementation of the ethnic studies requirement without legislative approval or statutory changes to help ensure that California teachers are ready when these deadlines arrive. We have come up with the following. Align the subject matter requirements for the social sciences authorization to the ethnic studies model curriculum adopted by the State Board of Education in March 18th of 2021, or to create a supplementary authorization for ethnic studies. I know the Commission has a lot on its agenda, but we wanted to use this opportunity to present these ideas to the Commission to keep in mind about possible actions that they might like to consider taking in the future. And that concludes my legislative report. Thank you for the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners might have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay, the public comment period for this item is now closed. Commissioners, are there any questions or comments on this item? Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
I had a question about 2401, the McCarty bill, in terms of teacher preparation and planning grants. And I've read it, but you've been around for a lot longer than I have. Does it have are there restrictions on the kinds of planning that can be done with this if it passes? Okay. Here we go. I thought you might have an idea. Thank you.
So that grant is for, as initially written, was for developing integrated undergrad programs. The author's office did ask us for some input, so we provided some ideas about also, especially for the early childhood, K-3 early childhood education specialist credential, including that, and also including options for internship programs and fifth-year programs. We don't know if that'll be included in the final version of the bill, but we did offer suggestions.
Thank you for advocating on behalf of the things that we're interested in.
The only other thing I would add is that
integrated undergraduate programs quite often include collaboration between a community college and a four-year institution, and I believe that is encouraged at least in the language and discussions with the author and the author's staff, that it's a goal that integrated programs continue to have that access point for planning collaboration.
And I would just add one item. Everything in AB 2401 is contingent upon an appropriation. That bill has $0 appropriated to it at this point. So even if it was passed, it would require a budget item to kick it into effect.
I don't want to take up the CTC's time, but we might have a conversation about, so then how does that happen? So
that question.
Quickly?
Yes, quickly. So another piece of legislation, like a separate bill that would just provides funds, would have to be done, or in perhaps a budget trailer bill, there would be a line item that said X amount of dollars appropriated to enact the provisions of AB 2401.
Commissioner Grenoshire, were you going to add something? Okay. Commissioners, any further questions or comments? Yes. Commissioner Hartwig.
Good morning. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your report. I just wanted to comment that I was happy to see SB 1487 from Senator Rubio. Yeah, Senator. And I guess I'm hoping that this will move forward. It looks like this could provide one other piece for our ongoing quest to really understand teacher supply in our state, especially the exit end of the teacher supply, which we've had multiple discussions about how difficult it is for us to get information about that. So, yes, I'm just saying I hope that this will move forward. It sounds like so far nobody has voiced opposition to it. I'm not sure why anybody would voice opposition to it, but I'm pleased to see this.
Yes, Commissioner Simmons.
Okay, I have a question on 2235, because that would create a supplementary authorization, are those added to 9th grade and below, or would this be the one that would have the high school option? And wouldn't it make sense for us to do a subject matter authorization as well? And I see Aaron coming to the table.
So I think that the legislation is vague enough that we could make that determination through regulations. So, we could author regulations for both the supplementary and the subject matter authorization. And that's typically what is done when we add the authorizations. That's what we did with dance and theater. So that would likely be the same path we would take.
And I just wanted to clarify for commissioners, the Medina bill is dead. It is not moving forward.
But do we not have regulatory authority to do that anyway?
We do, and that's what Jonathan was alluding to for potential future plans. So while the legislation would have obviously required us to, we now have the ability to on our own. And so I think that the plan is to bring an item forward in the near future to entertain that idea with you all.
Commissioners, any further questions or comments? Okay. This is an information item and no action is necessary. We're going to be moving on to item 5B. Item 5B, insert, analysis of bills, and is an information action item. We're going to start off with the first one here. Mr. Howard, will you please present the first analysis on SB 1487?
My presentation is for both, so we'll just take them one at a time. So, hello again. As I mentioned in the previous item, Commission staff have been approached by Senator Rubio and Assemblymember Rubio. They are sisters, asking for the Commission's support of legislation they are carrying this year. The two bills that the Commission has been asked to support are SB 1487 by Senator Susan Rubio and AB 2694 by Assemblymember Blanca Rubio. I have prepared analyses of these bills that are in the agenda. I will provide a summary of them now. The first bill, SB 1487, would require the Commission, in consultation with stakeholders, to design and develop a survey to provide to local education agencies to distribute to teachers who do not accept a position for the upcoming year or resign. Local education agencies would then be required to report the results of the survey to the Commission, and the Commission would then have to prepare a report to share with the Legislature and the California Department of Education. The bill is currently in the Assembly Education Committee, is not controversial, has bipartisan support, and as of now has no opposition and no votes. The author has expressed her concern with the high turnover rate for teachers in California schools, as well as the teacher shortage that the state is continuing to experience, and hopes that collecting better data on why teachers are leaving the field may lead to better solutions for retention and recruiting. If the Commission were to implement the legislation as now written, it would have an annual cost, or it would have a cost of $300,000 in the first year and $150,000 every year thereafter. Additional costs in the first year would pay for the development of the survey and the infrastructure needed to collect, store, and maintain the data. Commission staff, in discussing the provisions of this bill, believe a more effective and efficient means of achieving the goal of the bill would be add this question to an existing survey already maintained by the Department of Education. The California School Staff Survey is an online staff survey that was developed as a companion survey for the California Healthy Kids Survey to assess staff perceptions of the overall school climate, student behavior, attitudes, school programs, and policies. This survey provides a means to confidentially obtain staff perceptions about learning and teaching conditions for both general and special education, to regularly inform decisions about professional development, instruction, implementation of learning supports, and more. Additional questions regarding retention, resignation, job outlook, and satisfaction could be added to this survey. This change would fulfill the intention of the legislation without having to create a new survey or the infrastructure to administer it. The recommendation that the Commission support this bill and recommend the above amendments to the author's office.
Great, thank you. We will now open for public comments. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments.
Okay, the public comment period for this item is now closed. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Gross.
I have a question about whether we currently, if CDE currently presents to CTC about the results of the California School Staff Survey, or if we could include a request for that if we were to add these questions.
The results are public, so you can go to the CDE web, the Healthy Kids Survey and the Staff Survey, and there's another survey that all make up this group of surveys. That all that stuff is on CDE's website, and I can add that schools use these surveys to fulfill some of their obligations under LCFF in their LCAPs, so that's another place where it's located.
Can I just add a comment then? I love the idea of adding an extra question because teachers are surveyed to death. So thank you. Thank you for that recommendation, staff.
Commissioner Hartwick.
I see that I got ahead of myself on the last item, not realizing we were going to discuss it here. So I am all for streamlining and surveying less if necessary, but I do want to know a little bit more about this broader survey and whether it is effectively going to get the information that we are interested in, for two reasons. One is, if this is a big survey, what is the response rate for this, kind of a survey? Is it really quite a high response rate? And number two, when is the survey administered? Because one thing that I like about this separate survey is that it's done right within the time that somebody resigns or elects not to come back. And so it is targeted at the people who are leaving a school for some reason, as opposed to, I think, what this other survey is, which is just a broad survey of all teachers. And so it seems like we would be able to capture information about exits in a much more targeted manner than through the broader survey. And also that the timing of it might encourage more people to respond. This is now my just speculating, but something that is administered right after you leave, for a lot of people, I think, feels like part of the exit process, and maybe there's a higher obligation to actually respond to that survey than a broader survey that may be done I don't know what time during the school year this other survey is done. If the survey is done in the middle of the school year, that's hardly going to help us in terms of thinking about people exiting. So I fully understand the budgetary concerns and the not creating extra work concerns, but I also really am wondering whether that's going to, how effective that's going to be for getting the information that we are interested in.
Okay, so commissioners, there have been several hands, and I have you all written down here. Commissioner Heredia.
I just have a really quick, simple question. So, have you been in conversation with, with the staff from the senator just to discuss? Are they aware that we already have an exit survey? And have you been in conversation with them about here's what already exists?
So yes, we have been in conversation with the
I'm sure you've been in a lot of conversations with them, right? Sorry, I was trying to think how to put this.
Yeah, they came to us early asking a number of questions about what does CTC do, where is our scope, what kind of, if they were looking for this data, where would they be able to find it? Okay. This data doesn't exist right now, which is why they're looking to gain it. Right. And yeah, this is the amendments that I showed to you today have also been shared with them. They've been shared with CDE since they run this report. So
okay, so they
are aware of this existing infrastructure. They are aware.
Even though they're aware, they still want the bill to pass. They still want the cooperation.
The bill is, they can change the bill any time they want. They're open to changes of it. It just depends on They're looking for the best way to get the data they want.
Okay.
That probably won't cost them anything because in the building over there, that's an important detail.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
And just let me add, Commissioner Heredia.
Yeah.
I believe the staff would recommend that you support this bill regardless of the mechanism, but I think that we've been, for the reasons that Commissioner Gross raised and others, looking to minimize survey fatigue. But I think we are very interested in the outcome of that data. And I think the staff would recommend that we position ourselves to be available to support it in whatever mechanism makes the best sense.
That is correct. The recommendation is to support the bill in its current form. And if it stayed in that form, to still support it, but to recommend these set of amendments.
Commissioner Grinnell-Shire.
I think that makes good sense to support this bill. I'm looking through the text. The responsibility is to report the results of the surveys to the Commission annually. I want to make sure that information gets fed back to our higher ed partners because this has a lot to do with how we prepare our candidates in terms of their retention. So I just want to put a peg on that so that the Commission can be really proactive in making sure we get this information back. Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons.
Okay. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources in my district, and I have no part at all in the Healthy Kids Survey. In fact, I thought they had suspended it as a requirement that we weren't even having to do it anymore. So from my perspective, I would prefer us to have a survey that we're in control of the data. I did not look at the language of the legislation, but I wonder would it allow us to add additional questions? Because there is, how many times when we get the teacher supply report, do we have questions that we don't have the answers to? And I remember my Aunt Vanita, who died at the age of 107 a couple of years ago, who I believe is still on our system as having a lifetime credential. So I think for us to be able to be in control of the data would be helpful. Also, my district just went through an equity audit, and one of the things that we needed to do and that we have done is to create an exit survey to find out why people are leaving. And I think that for us to have a mechanism like this to identify who is leaving the profession will help us with our duty to address our own equity work. So if there was a friendly amendment I would want, it would be merely that we would be able to expand upon the minimum survey that they wanted us to do. And it's not like I never want to say that I have to do more work as an HR person because there's so much to do. But I do think that this is this would be worthy, and it would be helpful both on the local level and for us at the state. So,
Go ahead.
Commissioner, the language is vague enough. All it requires of us is to develop a survey for the purposes of collecting data from teachers of local education agencies as soon as they don't sign up for or they resign. And the only question that we specifically have to ask according to the legislation is if they are exiting the profession. So, but it's vague enough that we develop a survey, input from stakeholders. So additional questions could probably, as long as they're within the vein of the intent of the legislation, I think that would be fine.
I was just going to ask a follow-up of Commissioner Simmons. Are you recommending that we not propose the amendment to put it in the state survey, that we retain this survey here?
is the Healthy Kids Survey a mandatory survey that all districts have to participate in?
It is.
My understanding is that it is not mandatory. It's that school districts use it to fulfill mandatory requirements in their LCFF.
He's good.
And as I hate to spend money, but I would, my preference, I think personally, would be that we have the survey ourselves. But I just want to approve it one way or the other. So that's not a hard position.
Jonathan, I wonder if you could quickly just go to the fiscal impact on this, which I think is pertinent to the spending money question.
The fiscal impact to the commission would be, as I said, $300,000 in the first year and then $150,000 every year for staff to maintain the survey. And as one of the questions that came up, and Commissioner Hartwig mentioned this, is if a teacher is resigning and they have left, it is difficult to get them to fill out another survey. Mm-hmm. So one of the thoughts in embedding it in an existing survey is perhaps if they are contemplating it and it is on an anonymous survey, they will put that information in then. And the other part of it would be if it's part of a statewide survey, we could look at school districts and LEAs across the state and compare their answers. And we could say, you know, SAC Unified has a really high retention rate. Let's scroll down to the questions we were asking about, are you contemplating resignation? Are you happy? And then you could compare it to, say, Elk Grove Unified, where they have a low retention rate. And we could start looking at a broader, where we could see solutions. So that was some of the thoughts that went behind when commission staff.
The only other point that I'd like to draw your attention to is that the state budget includes proposed funding for staff at the commission for research and data analysis purposes. So our projected costs, if those funds stay in the budget and those positions stay in the budget, are absorbable, other than the development costs for any infrastructure here.
Okay, so there's several people on the list, but Commissioner Klatt and Commissioner Grenoshire, were you responding, wanted to follow up on Commissioner Simmons' comment? So if you want to go ahead.
Thank you. And yes, my question does follow up on Commissioner Simmons' comment. And my question was, and it sounds like I'm getting different answers about whether or not the California School Staff Survey is currently required. I didn't think it was, but the amendment says that it would require LEAs to complete that survey. So I guess my question would be, is there a way for us to get feedback first from districts to find out if they are in fact using it? Because I think some might be using things like Panorama or other mechanisms to fulfill that. And what would be the impact? How are districts going to feel if they currently have a different survey that they use to satisfy that, and now they're having to switch or do two now? And so I would be interested in finding that out before we set up a mandate that this one particular survey be used if it's not already, because that could have significant impact on districts if they've been collecting their data a different way, and now all of a sudden we're saying, well, you have to do it this way.
Commissioner Grenoshire?
My comment was similar to what Bonnie just said. I also, and this is probably in the weeds, if in fact if the commission wants to consider doing this, if we do develop a new survey, doing it ourselves, or thinking about all the external evaluation folks in this community who might help with this.
It's a good question, and I don't have a good answer to that question at this point. I think if the bill is successful and signed, and the responsibility lays with the commission to move forward, we will find the best way to put together the best way to do this. And I think it's an important data point that we need to focus on in this time of volatility in the workforce. Who's staying, who's coming, who's going. It's more important than ever before to understand the mobility and retention of the workforce, especially as we have enormous amount of funding to get out the door to recruit and develop teachers. We need to understand the whole spectrum of what's happening within the workforce. So something we would, I think, welcome the opportunity to participate in one way or the other. And if we are able to bring on the research staff that the budget proposed, we are also very excited to cultivate our ability to do some of the work we have had to contract out for or rely on other entities to do for us in the past. So somewhere in that constellation of resources, we would put together the best plan to implement this, and I think would welcome the opportunity to do so.
Okay, so I have Commissioner Davis, De La Torre, and then Sloan.
Good morning. Thank you, Vice Chair. On the California Data Dashboard, and I'm going to say the mechanism is the LCAP that causes us to give a local climate survey of our staff and also our students. So we do that diligently. I went to the focus groups for the data dashboard, so the various iterations all the way until where it is now. Also, been on the LCAP committee since the impetus of that, and so I was in the room when my district, my LEA, developed a partnership with a third-party vendor to get us our survey. And part of our survey asks about safety, school climate, supplies, materials, how safe you feel, but also asks those basic questions. Will you be employed here next year? Would you like to come back here? Or those kinds of questions are embedded. And with that third-party vendor, they have a menu of questions you can choose from. So they're kind of canned questions, but there are ways that we can get our own kind of embedded questions that we create in that survey too. So we give that survey to answer Commissioner Hartwig's question. We give that survey in the spring. So the students take it and we take it at the same time. So they give us an hour's worth of time or so during the school day to get that completed. So, and that information is used to help write our LCAP for the next year, 2 years, 3 years in the future. So, and then that information is transmitted, and I can see that information. I'm looking at our data dashboard right now. That information is transmitted to the state, and then it is published here so that the community is able to see that. Now, I don't know that that's a requirement in every district, but there is a place in the data dashboard for every district in California to have those surveys and the results of those surveys published. So I'm assuming that it is somewhat of a requirement already, and if they just add that nuance, because I don't think the part with retention of teachers, like if you're retiring or resigning, and all that information is kept here, but if they just add that little nuance, it could be stored here at the data dashboard and probably easily accessible to us on the commission via that mechanism. Just a thought.
I was just saying, having worked on CalPads for the last 5 years, I would not say it would be easy to do. It would be a possibility.
So, commissioners, what I'm sensing at the table is that there's consensus that this is an important thing to do and to support this bill is likely something you would like to do. So perhaps a motion to support the bill and work with the author to amend as necessary or if needed to support the best mechanism for doing it. Does that kind of capture the will? Rather, I'm not sure that we should be brainstorming that yet right here at the table. But give us the direction to go do that, and we'll send Jonathan off to do that if that's the will of the group.
Motion to support the bill?
Okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Davis to support the legislation and recommend the amendment presented by staff. Do I have a second? Go ahead.
My suggestion to you was that you could indicate an interest in the staff continuing to work with the author without proposing a specific amendment right now. So support for the bill and direction to staff to continue working with the author to make sure we have the best mechanism identified to do this.
Is that what you wanted, Commissioner Davis?
I'll just say ditto. Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Davis. Do I have a second? All right, a second by Commissioner Hartwig. I had 3 other people on the list. Should we hear your comments or? Okay, pass. Okay, Commissioner Sloan.
So I agree this is incredibly important, and I also want to consider what is important for us as a commission, in our lane, what we do, and the information I think that we need for our own policymaking purposes is to understand the relationship between preparation of teachers and administrators and educators, across the board, and retention and choices to leave. In other words, questions around how prepared, did anything about their preparation affect their decisions to leave or stay? And that could be anything from were they just not prepared for the community in which they were serving, or were there other kinds of issues when they got to the community they were serving? Did they have the right supports, the mentors, the everything else, all of the questions that would help us understand how to develop policies around preparation and induction and inform the field as well. So that's my other thing. Commissioner Grenoff-Shire mentioned we would like to have our higher education partners who are doing the preparation get this information back. We here at the table need this information back. School districts need this information back. So it's all to say that however this unfolds and whatever mechanism we use, we most certainly want to be a part of the development of what those questions are in order to make them most useful to what we do here. And clearly, the information is also going to be useful to school districts and our higher education preparation programs. So I just want to make sure that we're not adding things to our plate that is far beyond our lane is one thing. And I want to make sure that we are part of the conversation to shape it the way we need it to work for us. That's the second thing. And the third thing, and I think this just goes without saying, teachers need security in their anonymity of their responses as well. So however that rolls out, we want them, especially when it comes to something as sensitive as exiting and deciding to leave a place. So that's all I wanted to add.
Commissioner de la Torre.
I just wanted to state that this is very important because during our tenure on the National Board of Directors, I believe Heidi was there as well, we also decided to do an exit survey for teachers who decided to not pursue board certification, and that led to the revision of the certification process. So it's very important to understand why teachers are leaving the profession, because maybe there's something that we can do to prevent that from happening. So it might be and I know it was very beneficial for the National Board to collect that information. And in my program, the Support Network, we did the same thing. Teachers who would drop out, we surveyed them, and that helped us to revise our program to help meet their needs, and that just changed, it shifted the way that the program was run. So I think it's very important to collect this information. And the last thing is I did want to echo Commissioner Hartwig on, even though there is survey fatigue, it's very important to survey teachers when they resign or they leave. I think it has to be specifically done when that happens, because we want their information, not just all teachers on the general survey, although that's helpful too, but it's very important to get the teachers who are leaving their information. Thank you.
Commissioner Hartwig, were you going to add something else? Okay. Commissioner Simmons?
Another data point that would be interesting is, from the district perspective, how many people were released, non-reelected, resigned, and retired. So that's not a question for the candidate, but that is, I think, something that would help our work as a commission.
Commissioner Sloan?
I can't remember if I said this or not, but based on what you were saying too, David, we also want to know people who are choosing to stay, how that relates to what it is that we do.
So, commissioners, I think what I'm hearing is a move away from the proposed amendment and into a more open space of how could this survey be a utility hitter to inform the work at all of the levels that you've just described. And that's a conversation that Jonathan can continue to have with the author to make sure it's got the, sufficient authority for us to do that. And also to continue to find the best mechanism and way of doing that. And I'm very excited at the prospect of bringing in staff who actually have the skill set to help us do that. And this could be a very interesting line of work for us to develop. Also, CETERN, the California Teacher Education Research Improvement Network. You got to be proud of me for getting that right. Yes. Okay. CETERN is a group that's been doing a lot of research in this area, and there are other groups in the state that have also been looking at teacher workforce, et cetera. So, pulling together a thought team to implement this sort of thing, so we get the right structure and the right focus on it, I think would be a wonderful opportunity. So I'm confirming that you don't want to pursue the amendment as proposed, but you do want us to continue and take this conversation into conversation with the author and the staff. That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
And that was the motion on the table. Yep. By Commissioner Davis and seconded by Commissioner Hartwig. Okay, commissioners, any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next is AB 2694. Mr. Howard, if you can please walk us through this analysis.
AB 2694 is by Assemblymember Blanca Rubio. It would establish the Beginning Teacher Retention and Support Grant Program to fund teacher induction program costs. It would be administered by the Commission and is contingent upon funds being appropriated by the legislature. The bill would require the Commission to award grants to induction programs to be used on behalf of participants for mentor training, mentor teacher stipends, and exam or assessment fees. The Commission, in awarding grants, would prioritize programs with large contingents of participants who have not completed the teacher performance assessments or the reading instruction competence assessment, and the other grant priority would be for programs with many participants who pay their induction program costs personally. The intent of the legislation is to aid the large cohort of preliminary credential holders who need to complete their assessments to clear their credentials and who have had to delay that action due to the COVID-19 pandemic. These teachers are in their first or second year of teaching. They're completing their induction programs, but will need additional supports. The bill is currently in the Senate Education Committee. It is non-controversial, has no opposition, bipartisan support, no votes, and is sponsored by State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond. If the legislature appropriated funds for this program, Commission staff estimate it would require at least 2 full-time staff, 1 consultant, and 1 AGPA, and have an annual cost of just under $300,000. Commission staff believe that most, if not all, of the teacher preparation programs that have an induction program would apply for such a grant, creating a great deal of work for the Commission. Recommendation is that the Commission support this legislature.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments on this bill analysis.
Okay, public comment period for this item is now closed. Commissioners, any questions or comments? And I'm seeing the thumbs up. Yes, Commissioner Simmons.
Is this Prop 98 money, or could an IHE with an induction program access these funds?
The source of the funds hasn't been determined. It's upon appropriation of the legislature, so it would be they would decide whether it comes from Prop 98 or general fund or something else.
I think that if we're going to talk about a friendly amendment, it would be important that all induction programs have access to this piece of money, not just LEA-based ones. So if I can make that a motion.
So I have a. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Just wanted to make
totally
sure I
want
understood.
to support it. However, I do think we need to realize that there are LEA-based, non-LEA-based induction programs.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Simmons. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a second by Commissioner Heredia.
And I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I would strongly urge that the monies do not come from Prop 98. If this is something that needs to be, if we're really supportive of this and it needs to be done, I would strongly urge us to support the idea that it come from general funds and not Prop 98. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much, Mr. Howard, for your deep analysis and more. Having no additional items today, I adjourn the Legislative Committee.
All right, thank you. Next is the Educator Preparation Committee. Commissioner Klatt will chair the committee due to Commissioner Martinez's absence.
Good morning. I would like to reconvene the Educator Preparation Committee. We have 2 remaining items this morning. Our first item for today is item 3I, proposed adoption of regulations regarding options for meeting the subject matter competence requirement. This item is being presented by David DeGeer. This is an action item. Mr. DeGeer, will you please begin?
Thank you, Madam Committee Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Today's agenda item provides regulations for the Commission's consideration to clarify and standardize implementation of new options for meeting the subject matter competence requirement in Education Code sections 44259 and 44310 that were created by AB 130. AB 130 created some significant state policy shifts regarding the role of testing in educator preparation by creating coursework options for meeting the subject matter competence requirement, as well as the basic skills requirement. These changes were intended to further open teacher preparation to underrepresented groups and others considering a career in teaching. At your December 2021 meeting, the Commission approved a draft emergency regulations to clarify the meaning of 1, a major in one of the subject areas in which the Commission credentials candidates. 2, majors in which, in addition to liberal studies, that include coursework in the content areas pursuant to Subdivision B of Section 44282. And 3, successful completion of coursework. The Commission directed staff not only to submit an emergency regulation package, but also to further engage educational partners to identify if additional majors should be included in the permanent rule change that needs to follow an emergency regulation package. Commissioners requested that staff explore 2 majors in particular, kinesiology and ethnic studies. Staff submitted the emergency regulations package, but the Office of Administrative Law, OAL, advised that too much time had passed since AB 130 had been signed into law for them to consider an emergency rules package. Today, staff present draft permanent regulations for your consideration. The standards for acceptable coursework are unchanged from the December item, and staff begs forgiveness from Commissioner Simmons and math teachers across the state for not correcting the differential calculus example provided. Based on public comments, many meetings with educational partners since December, and other feedback provided to staff, these draft regulations identify additional majors and subject areas in which the Commission credentials candidates, and these are listed on page 3 of the agenda item. These recommendations are based on staff analysis and the experiences of educational partners in reviewing actual transcripts for the purpose of determining subject matter competence. For example, educational partners reported that they were easily able to find coursework in ethnic studies majors that aligned with the domains of the social science subject matter requirements. Therefore, ethnic studies majors are included as meeting the subject matter competence requirement for the single subject credential in social sciences. In contrast, the review process found evidence that regular kinesiology majors are generally missing some key content related to the key TK-12 student standards and student safety during physical activity. Therefore, staff is no longer recommending that kinesiology be considered as meeting the subject matter requirement for the single subject credential in physical education. Public comments received since this item was posted indicate that the staff's example major of early childhood studies from Cal Poly Pomona in Appendix B was presented incorrectly and is therefore a misrepresentation of how well child development majors meet the subject matter requirements for the multiple subject credential listed in Education Code Section 44282. Staff apologizes for this error and requests to be directed to engage in further analysis with educational partners regarding whether child development majors meet the subject matter requirements for the multiple subject credential. If it is determined that child development majors should be included in these regulations, staff will bring back revised regulations for your consideration. It is important to note that it is not possible to identify every possible major that could be considered as meeting the subject matter requirements for each credential because different institutions use different names for similar majors. These regulations identify the most common ones. Moreover, just because a major is not listed in the regulations does not mean that coursework used to complete the major or degree cannot be used to demonstrate that all domains of the subject matter requirements for a credential were covered. The transcript review option is available to all candidates in all programs. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the proposed regulations language and direct staff to begin the permanent regulation change process. Staff also requests to be directed to engage in further analysis with educational partners regarding whether child development majors meet the subject matter requirements for the multiple subject credential and to bring back revised regulations if it is determined that child development majors should be included in these regulations. If so directed, staff will begin the permanent regulations change process and work with partners to further review child development majors. And staff will also update preparation programs on the progress to expand the majors that are deemed as meeting subject matter competence. I am happy to answer any questions commissioners may have.
Thank you, Mr. DeGeer. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or by pressing *9 if participating by phone. We will have a 1-minute limit on public comment, so you should be able to see a timer on your screen. You may hear a warning beep when you have 20 seconds left, so we'd appreciate it if the public commenters limited their comments to 1 minute. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
Yes, we'll start with a public comment from members in the audience here at the Commission office. Melanie Oliver.
Just be sure to press the button until you see the green light.
Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here today. I'm Melanie Oliver with Riverside County Office of Ed and the Director of Center for Teacher Preparation. So I wanted to start by saying we are in support of alternate options for candidates to demonstrate their competency matter through the 3 proposed pathways. However, we would ask the Commission to consider additional guidance for the people that provide credential services as they vet the upper and graduate courses. Calibrating and understanding expectations for all involved is a must. As educators and leaders, I'm sure you would agree that clear communication along with assurance of understanding is vital to successfully moving forward. Again, we're in agreement with the proposed options. We're just asking for a little bit more clarity with those upper grad courses. Thank you.
Kendrick Jones, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kendrick Jones. I am the individual during the December meeting who made public comments on modifications for ethnic studies to be taken into consideration for social sciences competency. I just wanted to comment and say that I am extremely happy right now to hear that this proposal has made it to your desks. I am crying because I am just excited at the thought of just having that representation inside of the classroom for students from historically marginalized backgrounds to actually see themselves reflected in the classroom and in the curriculum. And I would just like to thank all of those who were a part of this process for just seeing it all the way through. Thank you guys so much.
Tony Isaacs, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Tony Isaacs. I'm Program Director of PEACH and Adjunct Faculty at Moore Park College. First, I want to thank you for suggesting, David, that CTC meet with educational partners to determine if child development ECE majors meet subject matter competence, and PEACH would be happy to assist in any way to coordinate these meetings with educational partners. PEACH urges the Commission to expand the list of baccalaureate degrees that meet subject matter competence to include child development, child and adolescent development, human development, and early childhood majors. Like the other degrees listed in item 3I, child development ECE bachelor's degrees include similar ECE competence matters embedded in the major. Please eliminate barriers for early childhood child development students and expand this list of degrees to meet subject matter competence. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide public comment.
Shazia Burke, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. Good morning, worthy chairperson and respected CTC staff. My name is Shazia Burke. First of all, I would like to thank CTC for adding flexibility to prove subject matter competency in biological sciences. As we know, biology has two main branches, botany and zoology. It is my humble request to CDC to provide a list of institutions that are evaluating transcripts who are qualified enough to evaluate the transcripts. So teachers are no more leaving this profession. Science is my passion, and I want to move forward with this. And thank you very much for listening to me and giving me this opportunity.
Jan Fish, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, commissioners. I am Jan Fish. I am co-lead of PEACH, and I am also professor emerita and current professor at Cal State Northridge in the ECE master's program, where before that I coordinated the baccalaureate in child development, the interdisciplinary major in child development. I have also held 3 Fulbright fellowships all around the world. I have taught in 4 countries in Latin America, 1 in Asia, 2 in Europe. I am very, very heartened by David's comments this morning. We in PEACH say this is a very important and wise addition to the number of and the type of majors for meeting multiple subject matter. It increases numbers, it increases diversity, and it increases impassioned teachers who are already in early childhood classrooms to continue to be multiple subject teachers. Thank you very much.
Bill, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Donna Cecil. I'm an adjunct instructor at San Diego and Mesa and Miramar colleges. Today I'm speaking as a member of PEACH and Tri-CECE. I would like to thank the commissioners for letting me speak today. I'm representing Tri-CECE, which is the California Community College's Early Childhood Educators. Tri-CECE serves and acts on behalf of California Community College Child Development faculty, departments, labs, centers, and campus lab staff. Tri-CECE is in support that the list of baccalaureate degree majors that meet multiple subject matter competence in PS 2010 be expanded to include child development early childhood majors. We urge that these majors be added to the list for additional consideration in the draft regulations. Thank you so much for your time.
Nancy Hurlbut, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Hi, I'm Nancy Hurlbut. I'm an emeritus professor in early childhood at Cal Poly Pomona. I want to support adding child development early childhood baccalaureates as a subject matter for liberal studies. For the multiple subjects credential. And I thank the staff for considering our comment. I do want to point out one of the things we did in our comment was to compare our pre-credential program to a liberal arts program to show that we do subject matter more. The intent was not to show that liberal arts doesn't meet it, because that program doesn't intend to be pre-credential. So I wanted to say that. Would you please remove the subject matter barrier for students majoring in child development at the undergraduate major and add that major for multiple subject credentials? I do want to beg your forgiveness and take some time, a few seconds on another matter. I need to clarify the way I said something yesterday. What I heard from the commission showed me that it could be misinterpreted. I totally agree with Marquita. I want to underscore that every dean of ed I have ever met has the goal to produce the best teachers possible and provide our children with the best education possible. I also know that deans of eds are underfunded already. Please don't ever think a dean would do something because it was just easy. They work tirelessly, as do teacher prep faculty. Thank you very much for your time.
We have no additional public comments.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner De La Torre?
I had a question. It says that these are for single subject credentials, and I'm on page 3I-3, and it lists the last bullet says for the early childhood education specialist credential, but I'm not sure that there is a single subject credential for early childhood.
No, there isn't. That's the one that we discussed over the past 2 days, so we may have put that in the wrong spot.
Oh.
But in the regulations, it's covered as a separate item.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons?
Okay, I had two questions and a point, 2 points and a question. Okay, for our friends from Riverside brought up the idea of publicizing this. Would the intent of the commission be to participate in CCAC and in what we used to call the spring fling when we do the credential analyst training, that this would be a topic of that conversation?
Yes, it would.
Okay. And the other question I had was with supplementary authorizations and subject matter authorizations, the plan would be that we would bring that forward fairly soon.
Aaron, yes.
Okay. And my last point is this. I think that people need to realize that the multiple subject authorization is the credential authorized the holder to teach all subjects in a self-contained class and a self-contained classroom, to team teach, regroup students across classrooms in grades 12 and below, including preschool classes organized primarily for adults. In addition, this credential authorizes the holder to teach core classes consisting of 2 or more subjects in the same group of students in grades 5 through 8, and to teach any of the core subjects he or she is teaching in a single group of students in the same grade level as the core for less than 50% of his or her workday. Which means that if you have a multiple subjects credential, you could teach 3 periods of Algebra 1 and 2 periods of geometry. Correct, Erin? I'm looking at you. She's nodding her head yes for the record. So I do not believe that the stakeholders you should be talking to are exclusively the early childhood community. You should also be talking to the NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and the other subject matter faculty to determine whether or not that we believe that it's an appropriate major for people who will be teaching middle school at that level. So just not to make more work for you, but I do think that this is it's a larger audience that we need to be engaging with before we would make the decision to give a multiple subjects credential to people who have a major in early childhood.
And Commissioner Simmons, my first objective would be to work with the early childhood professors to get accurate lists of what courses are involved in typical child development, early childhood majors, so that when we do work with other educational partners, we definitely know that we're giving them an accurate set of majors to look at.
Chair Sloan?
Thank you, staff, for all of the work around putting together these majors. This had to happen sort of fast and furiously. This legislation happened, and it's a big change. It's a very big change in what we have been doing. And programs have had to scramble to figure it out. There's been lots of confusion between candidates, programs, et cetera, et cetera. Now that we are getting to a place of figuring this out, and we have another item that's going to handle some of the confusion at this very moment, I wonder how we might think about moving forward with this work. I think there's two elements to this work, as you all have identified. One is identifying the majors that we can just across the board, program faculty can say, check, this candidate has subject matter preparation. But then the second part about the transcript analysis, that's very complex. And it has put as we've seen from our writers and others, a great deal of burden on programs to figure this out and figure it out quickly. There is a very short timeline between when a candidate applies to a teacher preparation program and provides their transcripts, and our preparation programs are not equipped to do this work in the manner that's required of them, because once a transcript analysis is done and everything is figured out, if the candidate does not have all of the required coursework, then the candidate does need to do a CSET or whatever else they need to do, and the timing gets really critical. So one thing I'm wondering if we want to consider, and I don't know how this can work, but for one thing, we do need some funding around this. Is there a centralized function so that not every single institution or program is providing the service to potential candidates, but there's a centralized function in our state that is providing the service to candidates who don't have a clear major, but who may have coursework that would suffice for the subject matter preparation, and they need an analysis of their transcripts. Several of our letter writers are saying we could have a database of courses across institutions. We could have, we need content experts to do these reviews. A lot of times teacher preparation program are not faculty or may not be the ones, or you have to go to all of the different faculty in your program to identify, does this meet the math requirement, does this meet the, et cetera, et cetera. There could be many advantages to having some sort of centralized function that was funded. We need it funded. And then we also need to have, we've talked about communication. There's a lot of communication that has to go on out there. Everybody going into college right now, I don't know how often our programs tell people this, but keep all of your syllabi. No matter what, even if you don't know what you're going to do in life, keep your syllabi. I've been an education minor advisor for many years at UC Santa Barbara, and there's always substitutions that students are asking for, and they need their syllabi. The second thing is tell professors you need to include a lot of information in your syllabi. I mean, what's been happening now over time is everybody has their courses in online formats, and it's no longer that we necessarily as professors have all the information in a single space anymore. So we need that for us to get this work done. So I don't know what this could look like or how it could happen. It might be sponsored legislation in the future. It might be something, but it's something I think for us to consider. So thank you.
Commissioner Francois?
Chair Sloan pretty much covered everything that I was going to say, probably better than I could have said it. I just want to remind everybody about the timing and labor that goes into this at the IHE levels and the reviewing of the transcripts. 2 and 3 hours sometimes for one candidate. And for our larger programs and our CSUs, it's almost prohibitive for some candidates. And having said that, and not to repeat what Chair Sloan said, I just also want to extend my appreciation to staff for taking this on. I do not think that the general public understand how complex the terrain of undergraduate curriculum and major is. And there's an assumption that we call everything the same thing. And I can tell you that at UCLA, we change the name of courses within majors all the time. And so the variation and variability within institutions of higher education and across the system, it's a really complex terrain. And I appreciate that you all are taking this on. I think that we're very understanding of how long this is going to take and how complex coming up with each of these lists is going to be. And I just wanted to say that because we see you and we understand that it's difficult, even as we press you and the public presses you to be better and to be more clear. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis, and then I will start a list.
I want to echo what Chairperson Sloan eloquently stated. In my particular case, I'm an English major, but also Pan-African Studies minor. The basis for my English degree, my BA in English, was African American literature or literature in the diaspora. So it was literature from the world. So it was basically ethnic studies in English. I don't notice English listed here, and I understand why, because I have a kind of a nuanced degree. But again, it was those course substitutions that got me to where I am with the degrees that I do have. So a central clearinghouse of transcript analysis would have to happen in order for me to qualify to teach something like this, or to figure out which pathway to which proper credential I would need to teach ethnic studies, which I do have an interest in, but would have no idea kind of how to get there. So I appreciate the work that the Commission is doing in your department, especially because, in echoing what the speaker said in the public comments, that, I literally was in tears when I thought, wow, I can use this now? Because there was never a way to teach this kind of content in classroom because of limited funding for books and materials. And now that we have this advent of the internet, right, there's so much information that's so readily available. So the possibilities are almost endless now. So I appreciate the conversation and what is here in the research that you've done. Thank you.
I think Commissioner Brown is next. And then...
Thank you. And I know that the Commission will not forget early childhood education. At the same time, one of the things that we're trying to create is something that is bridging into this credential world through subject matter competence. And Commissioner Simmons' comment about the multiple subject credential going clear up into middle school, which it does, puts the early childhood education program still in the middle. So I just want to say I'd rather have it in single subject credential and with all these other supports of subject matter competence equivalency. And truthfully, early childhood education is the younger part of what now is the multiple subject credential. And yet we're creating a credential that gives it its own legitimacy for really important reasons. So however that gets done, keep early childhood in its, I was looking, and of the 7 comments, 4 of them were from early childhood professionals. So we're still here. We still want to make sure that there's a place at the table for that in its own legitimate way. Thanks.
And I think Commissioner Grenoshire, and then Chair Sloan.
Thank you. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues, and thank you, David, for the grace and thoughtfulness in which you've approached this work. I also want to, again, remind the public of we need funding to support the kind of analysis that this requirement entails. I've heard from dean colleagues and credential analysts about the enormous workload of this. So just again, for those who are listening, we need additional funding for our higher ed partners.
Two different comments. One with respect to a centralized function. The other thing is many potential candidates apply to different programs, and having each of their programs do a different analysis makes no sense. So if there was something where they could get their certificate that says they have met subject matter for whatever program they apply to, that was the first thing. The second thing, and I know we're going to be talking about subject matter preparation. I don't know about subject matter preparation program work, but this is all hand in hand. We have many of our CSUs and independent colleges, some UCs have undergraduate subject matter preparation program pathways for our specific credentialing areas. I think we know a lot anecdotally about the kinds of preparation that those pathways give to candidates who want to become teachers. And they're specific to the needs of their credential, especially multi-subject and all of those areas. If everybody could go through them before they went into their post-baccalaureate teacher preparation programs, I would be a very happy person, because I do think they're better prepared if they have that very specific preparation. I also know that when the process to develop these pathways is quite onerous for higher education institutions, and we may want to, I know staff and everybody has been looking at that, but maybe also look at it in conjunction with early childhood majors to see whether there are some bridging subject matter preparation pathway options. Just a comment.
I just really want to appreciate this conversation. I mean, we had such an opportunity presented to us by the legislature when they lowered the walls last year around subject matter, and the opportunity to increase access for folks who looked at one more test they had to jump over to get into preparation. If we really want to get to addressing teacher shortages, removing barriers is a really good thing. And you all have appreciated that at this table previously, as have our faculty who are laboring under this process right now. They're appreciating the opportunity to grant access, but completely overwhelmed by the process. And the process doesn't have parameters established by the state for it yet. And I would also say that the subject matter domains against which every transcript needs to be evaluated were never designed for that task. So I think what you're describing here in terms of ways to improve this process is multifaceted, and we'd like to take that and start to engage in conversation with the administration and the legislature to see if there's a way to to put a little bit more structure around a process that doesn't bring the barrier back, but that does maybe bring some support to the effort, if that makes sense.
Any further questions or comments? We do need an action here if we are going to approve the proposed regulations language and direct staff to submit a permanent regulation change package to the Office of Administrative Law.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
I just didn't want to repeat the mouthful of.
I thought that might be helpful. And I have it right here. So I do have a motion by Commissioner Davis. Do I have a second? A second, I think, from Commissioner Simmons. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Right, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. DeGeer.
Thank you.
Our last item for today is item 3J, consideration of continued suspension of preconditions requiring demonstration of subject matter competence prior to daily whole class instruction. And I'll try to slow my sentence down to give staff time to transition. This item is being presented by Cheryl Hickey and Jake Schuler. This is an action item. Mr. Schuler, are you ready to begin?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. Good to see you all again in person, and to those that are new to the commission in that time, good to meet you in person. So this agenda item asks you to discuss and decide on extending for one school year the COVID flexibility in which programs may allow student teaching candidates to start daily whole class instruction without first meeting the subject matter requirement. These candidates would still need to meet the subject matter requirement before being recommended for their preliminary credential, but would not need to complete it before daily whole class instruction. This option, which requires the suspension of precondition 3 in the Ed Specialist preconditions and precondition 6 in the multiple single preconditions, was first put in place in March 2020 when testing centers closed down because of the pandemic. At that time, subject matter competence could only be satisfied by passing the CSET or by having completed a commission-approved subject matter preparation program. As you know and just heard more about in David's item, item 3I, there are now the additional options, including completion of a relevant degree major or coursework which covers the relevant domains of the subject matter requirements. It's important to note that this suspension of the precondition does not apply to intern candidates who are required by statute to demonstrate subject matter before becoming teachers of record. Also, programs may choose to require the subject matter competence requirement demonstration earlier in the program. It would be a program level decision to do so, and we know that some programs have begun to move back to pre-pandemic rules of requiring subject matter before student teaching or even at admission in order to set internal benchmarks for credential requirements so that candidates can complete them as early as possible in the program. As you can see in the item, the rationale for proposing a one-year extension of the flexibility is twofold. One is the continued uncertainty around testing center capacity. There is still some variance in testing center capacity in the state, and while online proctoring is in place for some exams, there are others that are not available due to complex functionality issues. The second reason for the extension is the need for more time to effectively implement the new subject matter competence options by degree major or coursework evaluation that you were just discussing. As you've heard and discussed, programs have been overwhelmed by establishing and implementing new processes to carry out these new options, and candidates who do not qualify after an evaluation have been left with a very short window of time to instead take appropriate exams. The last thing to highlight again on this issue is the timing. The flexibility would only be extended for the 22-23 school year and would not apply to candidates who begin their programs after May 1st, 2023. That concludes my presentation, and Cheryl and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. And I think we will continue our 1 minute time limit for speakers. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments on this item.
I'll give it a moment. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Simmons.
I just want to say that the reason why that this is important as a requirement is because I'm old enough to remember when people would get through their whole program having paid all the tuition and hadn't passed a test yet, and then they end up never passing the test. So putting the requirement in place is a good thing. On the other hand, if we can't tell them what subject matter is, I don't see how that we can expect it to be a requirement. So I think putting it off for a year makes a whole lot of sense.
Was that a motion?
If you
All right, then I do have a motion by Commissioner Simmons that the Commission continue the suspension of the precondition requiring demonstration of subject matter competence prior to daily whole class instruction for non-intern candidates enrolled in the 2022-2023 academic year. That's what that's what Commissioner Simmons said.
I'll second that motion.
All right, and I have a second from Commissioner Heredia. Are there any other comments or questions?
I just want to say thank you. I just think this is so critical, especially in areas where I'm thinking of those who live in rural communities, just to try to keep candidates, in their districts is a challenge enough. But I think giving them another year will be of special support there. So thank you, everyone.
Any other questions or comments? Chair Sloan?
I also want to say that this was also a function of the confusion around the new subject matter preparation, as I was talking about the timing that happened with candidates and all of the misinformation because people didn't understand or know yet. And so this was not, I just want to be sure that people understand that this was not in a an attempt to say subject matter preparation is not important. It's that the timing created situations where there were a lot of candidates who were applying to programs and programs who wanted to accept them but hadn't yet determined if they had met their subject matter preparation requirements, and it just created this stopgap that needed some relief, because we're starting to see candidates saying, well, forget it. I thought I was ready and could enter this program, and now I'm not going to become a teacher. So everybody, this is a relief valve for this year, and it does not mean that subject matter is not important. It does not mean that they are not going to demonstrate that they have the subject matter. It is just a little bit more time to do that.
Commissioner Heredia?
So I do have another, the May 1st date that's noted here. I'm thinking about, candidates who are accepted prior to May 1st. And sometimes there are, there's kind of like a jump start on the fall semester, in which, they have like maybe, there's some kind of, not really coursework, but it's an introduction to coursework, or it can be introduction to school sites or things, but there's some work. So I didn't know if you had given any thought about those that are accepted, and universities say, hey, guess what? We're going to start doing something in April.
Right.
And offer you some opportunities before, so you get a jump start for the fall.
Right. You've identified and hit on what has been probably the biggest challenge of this. We know that this flexibility has to end at some point. And institutions across the state admit at different points in time. They start at different points in time. So the May 1st date was our attempt to say, if you start any part of the program after May 1st, then you must do subject matter in alignment with the normal preconditions. And so we will work with institutions to make sure. We were talking about, does that include the orientation? Does it include the, so there's all sorts of things. So you've hit on the exact challenge that has been difficult about this whole thing. And so I think for us, the idea is they've started the program, and how the institution determines that. There may be some variation there, but hopefully by putting a must start the program prior to May 1st in order for this to work, we'll clarify things 99% of the time, or 90% of the time at least, I hope. Yeah, that has been a challenge. Jake, did you want to answer anything else?
No, that's exactly right. I think there's an assumption that there'll be some programs who are going to come to us and say, we do things starting in April, does it qualify? And we'll just work, one-to-one with programs to figure out what the situation would be. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then we have a motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Schuler and Ms. Hickey, for presenting the item and all the work that it took to get us there. It has definitely been a year that requires special circumstances. It's been a year, for sure. And with that, having no additional items, I adjourn the Educator Preparation Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Clapp, for stepping in. Well done. I'd like to reconvene the general session and move to item 2H, interview and recommendation of a member and alternate to the school board member position for the Committee of Credentials. The ad hoc committee recommends to the full commission the appointment of Michelle Peral to serve in the school board member position on the Committee of Credentials. I move to approve the recommendation of the ad hoc committee. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner De La Torre Escobedo. Any further discussion? Oh, did you second it? Yeah. Jumping on that. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And thank you again to the ad hoc committee coming in early on a 3-day meeting. Appreciate it.
audience presentations.
Didn't have my microphone on. Do I need to say that again? Okay. I will now recess the general session. Members of the commission will go into closed session. The general session will reconvene after the closed session. Thank you. Okay, I would like to reconvene the general session and move to agenda item 2J, report of the closed session items. Vice Chair De La Torre Escobedo, would you please read the closed session report?
Closed session items, June 16th, 17th, 2022. Staff briefed the Commission on potential litigation and no reportable action was taken. The Commission granted the following petitions for reinstatement: Raymond Beltran, Michael Caton, Rodrigo Martinez, Maria Salvador, Ismael Munoz, and Thomas Luker. Commissioner Heredia recused from the Raymond Beltran matter. The Commission denied the following petitions for reinstatement: Gabriel Macias. The Commission rejected the proposed decisions in the matters of Elia Cisneros, Christian Hansen, Lincoln Johnson, John Keller, Bernardo Lopez, and Kristen Meadows, and called for the transcript. The Commission reviewed the transcript in the matter of Charles Droelet. A decision and order will be prepared for the Commission's adoption. The Commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. The Commission adopted a decision and order in the matters of Griselda Jauregui, Liam McConville, Rebecca Paris, Lupe Perez, and Mary Pierce. Commissioner De La Torre recused from the Griselda Jauregui and Liam McConville matters. The Commission sustained its prior decision in the matter of Joey Diaz. Commissioner De La Torre recused from this matter. The Commission discussed consent calendar items 51, Jacobo Jr., number 56, Laufenberger, number 62, McKinsey, number 65, Mesiska, and number 78, Powdell, and remanded the matters back to the Committee of Credentials. This concludes the closed session report.
Thank you. And commissioners, I now adjourn the June 2022 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. The next meeting is on August 25th and 26th, 2022. There we go.